Everybody, drop your buffs.
Drop your buffs.
Everybody, drop your buffs.
Drop your buffs.
Everybody, drop your buffs.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Drop Your Buffs podcast, where we recap the strategy, social game, and
stupidity
of each Survivor episode. Djon, was that your Sandra impression?
You know what? I don't know what it was, but that's better than any other Sandra impression that I've ever done.
Accidental. I love it. Okay. How are you doing today, Djon?
Good. I am filming from cloudy Melbourne, Australia.
What?
I got on a plane the other day, and I got on a plane to get to Australia. How interesting is that? No, I got into about a 15-and-a-half-hour flight, got to Melbourne, and surprisingly, not feeling very jet lagged, up nice and early to record this with you. And I thought, fitting for the occasion, I'm wearing my Australian Survivor
Oh my
buff.
gosh. Are you kidding me? I love it.
Yeah. So very excited to be recording with you from the other side of the world.
Are you also in tomorrow? What day is it where you are?
It is currently Friday morning. So, and I think it's
Thursday night.
Yeah.
Where I am.
So,
how is tomorrow? What is it like?
You know what? It could be sunnier. I actually feel like the weather's better in America at the moment, which is funny because we're going into summer in Australia.
No.
You guys are going into winter. Yeah, it's so backwards, but no, it's cool. It's nice to be home. I got lots of puppy cuddles from my mum's dogs and things like that. So I'm hoping they're not going to bark throughout this. So let's keep our fingers crossed.
We'll see. Before we jump into the episode, this big meaty episode.
Two really big episodes.
I wanted to take a really random moment and be super meta, if I'm using the phrase correctly, and just talk about the podcast for a second.
Let's do it.
I just wanted to say thank you to everyone who's been following along so far. I just when we got started, it was just me and Djon wanting to have fun recording us talking about Survivor. And I just expected for maybe our close friends to listen to it, maybe our moms, maybe brothers and sisters. And it's just been kind of overwhelming with how many people have been invested in it with us and also have really enjoyed it.
Yeah, it's incredible the people that have also reached out to just kind of say thanks for making the podcast. I love listening to you guys either on the way to work, on the way home. And it's that actually means so much to us. So thank you for following along, but also expressing that you enjoy it. You know, it's one thing to listen, it's another thing to kind of reach out.
Yeah, and then on top of that, when strangers reach out and say they're loving the podcast, I'm like, wait, what?
Yeah.
There's other people listening? And and also when me and Djon went into this, we are both perfectionists, and we went into this podcast just literally saying to each other, we're going to have fun. We're not going to try to make this the perfect podcast and all that.
We definitely had a lot of discussions about how we want to set up our podcast, how we want each episode to flow. And I think the investment that we put into thinking about that stuff was what we needed to remove all of that stuff to just go, what's going to set us apart is that we're talking about our thoughts and feelings about the show based on the information that we're given from the show.
And our perspectives and our what we love about Survivor, and just we're okay, we're just gonna have fun doing this, and if people are going to enjoy listening, then more power to them. And and Djon and I were talking before we started recording, just there's a lot this episode, and we still want to have fun talking about the episode. We still want to make fun of the players for the little things. And we still want to talk about the stupid moments and the funny stuff that happens. And we are going to still talk about the episode chronologically. And when we get to the big moment, we're going to dig deep like Jeff Probst tells us to. And we're going to talk about our thoughts and feelings about the big stuff of this episode.
Absolutely. And I think it's worth noting that we're going to address this as well as Survivor the game and as real life.
Oh,
and we
yeah.
will definitely talk about those moments and make sure that we're trying to address these things as accordingly and try not to blur the lines too much. As I personally think that that's where a lot of the I don't want to say confusion. There's not really confusion in how this episode has come across, but a lot of the different takes of this episode seem to be where the lines blur between game and real life.
Wow, you are taking the words out of my mouth. So to like wrap a bow on that, we'll say thank you for listening. Thank you for like understanding that we're people trying to understand and try to express how we're feeling about this episode. And we're just going to keep on trucking and know that you're going to give us grace as we talk about this.
Yes, grace under pressure.
Woo. So jumping right in, Djon, can you believe that there's still fever dreams going? We're still getting those flash forwards of moments to come. Are you still loving it? What are you thinking about the fever dream?
Okay, admittedly, I had arrived in the country approximately an hour and a half before the episode was to air.
Yeah.
I do.
You messaged us and you were like, okay, guys, who are still us in like on the East Coast in America. You're like, how many hours till Survivor's on? You're like, is it like an hour left? We're like, you've got an hour to make it to a TV and watch with us.
Yeah, exactly. I was like, T minus how many hours? Because I needed to make sure that I was going to catch the episode. Unfortunately, I was still in the car, I was trying to watch it on my phone, and I missed the fever dream. It wasn't until I watched the first episode again today that I was able to go back and watch the fever dreams. So I'd love to hear your input about what you thought about the fever dreams prior to watching the episode.
Yeah, I mean, like, it just like gives me a little taste of drama to come, but there was nothing substantial about it. I think we've had some fever dreams where I'm like, ooh, but this one,
so what we did see, we saw Lauren's face and the words, "Can I trust her?" being uttered. The second one was Nora saying, I'm like really disgusted. And the third one was when Tommy was saying to Lauren on the beach, she scares the hell out of me.
Yeah, I think like, I just remember feeling like, oh, Missy's in trouble, and then like, didn't even think about it anymore. And did any of those pay off? No.
I mean, I feel like the disgusted fever dream that we saw from Nora was kind of trying to give the audience an idea of the direction of this episode. Like, people are still but also at the same time thinking, oh, people are still playing a game. And I would actually love to address this right now, which is there is that whole thing that we have to remember as fans of the show, as people watching the show, that the people on this island, the people in question about everything that's been going on this episode, are currently in the midst of playing a game for $1 million. And we've seen season after season, almost every contestant will go into a season saying, I will do whatever it takes to win $1 million. We've seen people burn each other's items. We've seen people lie about their dead grandmas. We've seen people do a lot of questionable things in order to win $1 million. And it will come to a point that the audience will either agree or disagree with that person's take on it. But this is a heightened reality. A lot of people say reality TV isn't real, and I often refer to it as being a heightened reality. When is it going to be a real situation that you get marooned with people that you don't know and have to vote each other out on a 3-day basis? Like, that's not real life. But these are real people in a heightened environment. So I just want to address that these people are still playing a game. So what we see of them on the show doesn't necessarily reflect their perspective on this in real life. So in saying that, we have all of these game players playing with each other. Great, well worded. But with their own agenda. All of these people have an agenda. All of these people are lying, manipulating, doing what it takes to get further in this game. So when you see people saying, I'm disgusted, when you people saying, I don't trust her, like, it just shows that these people are so in it that it can make everything around them so blurry. So just to kind of like set up the circumstances that there is a lot going on that we're not seeing as an audience, their environments are extremely heightened, especially this season, in my opinion.
Ooh, that's a lot from a fever dream.
Yeah. It's kind of like, oh, okay. Well, let's get into it. And the episode opens up. We come back to camp life after tribal council for Lyro, and we have what is one of the most disappointing things that we can see from a game player to another game player, which is to call someone out when they've actively helped you.
Oh, that was so awkward. Nora, her stand is that she's playing the honest game, and apparently she's not gonna lie because she just eventually just came out and said it. And that's when Jamal says that Nora or like Kelly is trying to play the underground game. And he says, never tried to play an underground game with Nora. And that is so true. We saw Nora throw Kelly just right on under the bus. And Kelly's like, please stop saying my name. Please stop saying my name. And I feel like Kelly regretted it immediately that she even brought Nora into the mix.
Well, I mean, jump to the end of the episode where Jamal goes up to Nora and says, hey, do you want to make a move with me? I was like, wait, didn't we see him just talk about how it's not a good idea to make a move with Nora?
Exactly. He had nowhere to turn. You know what? When it comes to Nora, you just have nowhere else to turn except Nora. You have to go to Nora world.
Here's the thing. In order for that play to be played last episode, Nora was essential in the play. Unfortunately, the aftermath of the Nora move is that Nora is Nora.
Exactly.
But also Dean is Dean, and Dean isn't going to help that. And I think Dean also had a responsibility in saying, well, you know, he could have saved Lauren. He could have saved Kelly's ass if he really wanted to in that moment. He could have said, well, you know, I was approached by Nora. Like, you know, everybody's lying already. And, you know, Nora's talking about playing an honest game. But then if you're playing an honest game, don't vote out your friend's ally. It's just such a kind of like questionable, it was a questionable tribal, it was a questionable after tribal experience. And it really kind of set up the episode for being like, there is mistrust within everyone.
Ooh.
And I mean, you know, the first thing we see is in the morning, they go idol hunting.
Yes. And I was rooting so hard for Kelly to find one. I was like, come on, girl, do it.
Yeah.
I don't know why. I just rooted for her to find it because, you know, I love Jamal. But like, I was like, all right, she can keep this train moving. So we see Kelly find an idol the morning of the merge, mind you. They go merge later that day. So she finds the idol again. And I just thought that was awesome timing because the next thing we see are tribes arriving on boats to the merge feast. And I was just like, wow, she got it in the nick of time.
She did, and I think we're all very aware that she needed it in that moment.
Yes, she did.
Because the thing is, Kelly, I want to talk about Kelly as a game player because Kelly has been such a force to be reckoned with in this game. She's somebody who, you know, at the start, we saw her kind of like finding herself in alliances and then having these one-on-one relationships and being able to conduct herself with certain people quite well and, you know, heightening the moments that need to be heightened and being delicate with the moments that need to be delicate. And she's just a very interesting person. The fact that she was able to bond with Dean so much, even though she was on a tribe with a majority of her former contestants, like she was very much in a really good position because she got herself there, but did she make a move too early, which then, you know, ostracized the people that she said were her closest allies in the form of Jamal and Janet, which was a really interesting takeaway because I don't think we ever had a moment from Kelly saying, I'm working with these people, they're my closest allies. You know, she didn't really have that in the lead up to this. I feel like Kelly was her own player. I don't think of her as a pair.
Yeah, I don't think we ever got, like, we've seen her work with a lot of people, but we never got the story of who she's the closest with, besides saying she really wants to work with Dean. And we saw how that worked out.
Right. And it's funny because we saw Kelly's name come up from a lot of people this episode. It wasn't just one person getting their agenda. You know, we had Lauren and Tommy bring up her name. We had Missy bring up her name. It was one of those things that was like, I think Missy and Kelly acknowledged each other as the biggest threat because their games are so similar.
Yes.
Yet that they were that player of their tribes on either tribe that they were on.
And so, like, what we see right at the merge is that we see people jump right away into planning out what the big new alliance is going to be, where the number is going to be. And we see Vokai 2.0. So that's the new swap tribe of Vokai, say that they want to stay together, plus bring on Kelly and Janet. And what do we see Kelly say? Kelly says, nope, not for me. I don't want those 4 old Lyro to be benefiting from my alliance. And now looking back on it, it's like, Kelly, you broke the #1 survivor rule. You have to say yes.
But see, Janet supported her. Janet stood next to her and supported her. And in that triangle of 3 people, there was the 2 of them being approached by one person. And I think Tommy was hurt and saying, you know, everything I threw out, they said no, no, no to. And I can see the frustration there. But I'm sure that they would have had the side of it saying, Tommy and Lauren, if you come work with us, we've got 2 people that can't get the numbers. We still have the majority with the original Vokai. So I think that's where it's funny because we know the numbers. We know the numbers game. He was trying to make a 9. They were trying to make a 7.
And you know what we saw with the what we saw happening is that Kelly and Janet say no, and who ends up on the outs of that vote? Kelly and Janet and Jamal. And so, like, that's what happened.
Yeah. And it's funny because also we had Nora on the outs. We had Karishma on the outs. The only person who wasn't on the outs was Dean. So
voting out for his own friend who just saved him.
And here's the thing. Like we were concerned about last episode, and I brought up, I was like, will Dean go back to his old tribe? And he did vote with Elizabeth and Missy and Elaine and, you know, those people that in one way did betray him by voting out his closest person, but they also protected him from being the vote.
Right.
So even though we didn't see that edit, and the reality is we didn't see an edit of them approaching him. We saw Tommy and Lauren approach Dean, who they've known for 2 days, and they were able to convince him to turn on Kelly. Like, what kind of game is Dean playing?
So I guess Dean might be our new resident Sandra. Anyone but me. Just let me keep going. I'm fine. Just let me stay here.
Right. I would like to think that Sandra's a little more perceptive because time and time again we see
Wait, are
Dean
you
being
like, Dean Kowalski is not perceptive?
I would not be employing him. Because you just see like the move, literally the move that was the episode before this was him not seeing that he was about to go home and it was Kelly saving him. And now he's voting her out. The one source of protection that he has.
Oh my gosh.
Oh, Dean. So I don't necessarily think that was in Dean's best interest to go ahead and get her voted out. I just think he's playing a numbers game where he actually
he obviously doesn't have he does not have any sway or power in the vote right now. He's just trying to survive.
Right. And I think that was a missed opportunity to actually really work closely with someone in the form of Kelly.
He's got to figure out what numbers he can work with. Okay. And so speaking of someone like not being perceptive of what's going on, Lauren tells Missy that the plan is to vote her out.
Before we see Lauren talk to Missy, it's important that we mention that Missy and Kelly went on a walk together. And this is kind of where this episode begins. because we saw Kelly and Missy meeting for the first time, never been on a tribe together. And the reason they bond is over their uncomfortableness of sharing camp with Dan.
Mm-hmm.
And
we
I
see
took
that right off the bat.
So yeah, so what has happened, they've just had a conversation about how uncomfortable Dan makes the two of them in camp life. And Missy says it's a game, so I'm assuming nobody will want to say something because you can't make a scene right. And I think this is the distinguishment between game and real life.
Mm-hmm.
This is where we're able to go, all right, I'm dealing with a real life thing, but we're playing a game, so I don't want to bring this to light. Which I think is worth noting, because it's like both of these girls in confessionals and in everything refer to how this is it's about protecting them in the game. It's not about protecting them in real life. In real life, situations are handled differently. And it's not to say that they couldn't be handled in a real life situation, because real life is real life. Whether it's a game or not, it's whatever. But they made the decision not to address these things based off of the idea that this is a game.
Yes.
In that moment, this is what they discussed to each other without any confessional.
Missy and Elizabeth. Missy
and Kelly.
Missy and Kelly on their walk talk about that.
Correct.
All right,
so
we got that out there.
Then we see Kelly having a conversation with the producers, and she says it's super upsetting because it's like you can't do anything about it. There are always consequences for standing up. This happens in real life, in work settings, in school life, because you can't say anything because it's going to affect your upward trajectory. It's going to affect how people look at you.
Mm-hmm.
So this is before we get the rest of that confessional with tears and production chiming in. But she does say, in her sense, that there is, we can say that there's the game and then there's real life. And she's worried about how it gets portrayed now in life. All right. So we've had the conversation between the two of them where they're talking about game. And then we have a confessional on her own about how it affects you in real life. So I can see how that can be one of those blurry line situations. It's not to say that any side of it is any better than the other, but it's worth addressing that the two of them talk about how uncomfortable it makes them feel, but because it's a game, you can't say anything. Or at least
Kelly is saying that, yeah, my real life is just like this game. I don't feel comfortable speaking up right now and like ruining something that I have going for me. Just like in real life, I don't feel comfortable if I have to speak out about something because it might ruin future chances. She's like making that correlation. And wow.
It's so important as well. Like, I don't want us to sit here and discredit any of this conversation. It's so important. The fact that somebody can speak so openly about this on national television is so important. It's one of those things that needs to be heard. I think there has been discussion from audience members that they're unhappy with the edit. They're unhappy with what was being shared. They're unhappy with how it was being conducted. But the reality that I see as an audience member, as a person watching the show who has dealt with their own prejudices, their own differences, their own kind of stuff, when I see stuff that I can relate to on TV that stems from a negative place for me, I feel almost empowered to know that it's not just me. I'm not the only person experiencing these things. I'm not the only person sitting there racking my brains, making myself sick with these thoughts of feeling unsupported. And I think it's really important to address that. This episode for me showed support in sharing this information. I don't think it was supporting anybody in their one idea. I think it was giving so much information in, a 1 or 2 hour slot. And I just don't want to take away from the importance of what was being addressed because of how it ended up being addressed. It's like, let's be angry about the fact that it's happening. Let's not be angry at the show.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? It's just kind of like, these are real life things. And so many times in shows, in these things, people will edit things in order to please an audience to make them less uncomfortable. When I hear people talk about how uncomfortable they are from watching like an episode of Survivor because it just wasn't nice and it wasn't fun and this, my response to that is suck it up. Because some of these people are uncomfortable on a daily basis because they have to deal with these things in real life. If you're uncomfortable for 15 minutes, consider yourself lucky. I'm sorry, there's no wiggle room on me for making, I'm sorry that my troubles are making you uncomfortable.
Right.
I have no
this
sympathy
is real
for that.
life. And like, I am learning a lot from this whole thing. And I have not been online to see people's responses. I have only been hearing responses from friends I've been texting and talking to about this past episode. Like, that's my only dialogue I've been having so far. So man, I mean, I don't think that being angry about this episode is the way to go. I think that the step is, what can I learn from what's going on?
Absolutely. And something that I've heard from like this season up, like you and I have expressed how much we love this season because of the real life moments.
Yes,
now,
we have.
there is another side to this audience who doesn't like real life influencing the game. And to that I say, do you understand what Survivor is? Because for me, Survivor, there is a template. There is a template of a structure of a game where you have people out on an island, they vote each other off, and then they have to convince a jury of their peers who they voted out to cast $1 million vote for them to win. Sure. Now, the reason that each season is so different is because of how every individual player in each individual cast can influence the game based on who they are as people. You know, this is not chess. It's not a plastic piece that's getting moved. It's a real life person who has feelings, who has thoughts, who has desires, who's got their own agendas. That's what makes this game so tantalizing. That's what makes it so juicy and so, for me, that's what makes Survivor worth watching. The fact that these are real people.
Yeah.
It's the seasons that people have no voice, no care factor, no interest, that we sit here and go, it's like every other season.
I love how
so juicy.
I love how people like didn't even know they were going to get like a Survivor 101 theory right now in the midst of a podcast episode, because like what you're saying is like, yes, that's what we're here for, Survivor. And like, I guess I'll just jump into kind of my big idea from it as we continue to talk about this whole 2-hour episode, is that it is a game with real life people, like you said. And as we keep on saying, it is a game. And where do the lines blur? When are you crossing the line and when are you not? One of my thoughts was, it's okay that certain girls felt uncomfortable, and it's okay that certain girls are like, oh, I'm fine. It's okay for both and.
Right. Yeah. And I also want to like mention that the episode then stems from Kelly and Missy's conversation. Lauren pulls Missy aside and says, Kelly's trying to reel you in and make you feel comfortable. So already Missy is starting to get this impression of Kelly that the information that they're bonding over is possibly heightened, a little falsified, a little, let's make it out like I'm feeling more uncomfortable than I am in order to reel you in. Again, very, very blurry, because it's like, these are real life situations. We've seen Kelly in a personal one-on-one confessional speak openly about how much this affects her. But then in the game stance, we've seen people season after season talk about how another player will make them feel this way or that way. That's how you bond with people, talking about how you feel, how you are made to feel by another player. Unfortunately, the context in this situation is very serious. And in my opinion, it crosses a line when you use something that is so sensitive, so sensitive as like sexual assault and kind of that kind of heightened real life situation to influence your place in a game. And even to have the girls later on say to Dan, of course that's what I told her, but we're fine. Oh, that's horrible. That's horrible to say to this man, I'm telling another person that I feel made to be uncomfortable by you in order to help our games. That was my takeaway. And to watch him have to go from person to person. And okay, I want to preface this by saying that I'm not defending any one cast member or their thoughts, feelings, actions, anything like that. I'm going off of the information that we're provided. I see it from multiple stances, and if any of those stances don't vibe with you or the listeners, I'm sorry that it's not gelling in the way that you would like it to. But I do try to see every angle on a situation before making one judgment that could really hurt another person when it's made off of either an assumption or a judgment made by another individual. Do you know what I mean? It can get very muddy. It can get very ugly.
Okay, so here is where I'm at with Survivor in the game. It all comes down to me with the line, with crossing the line, where the line is between the game and when you have crossed the line of the game. And I am one who actually, like, honestly, I'm one of those people where the line is like pretty far away. Like when I think of Survivor and strategy, I'm like, you know what? Lie, cheat, and steal. Do whatever you need to do to win this game. But there is a line. So for me, thinking about this episode, it was like, okay, where was the line and when was it crossed? Okay. So here we go, jumping into it. Here is one of my big thoughts, and I've shared this with a few people already, and I've gotten some affirmation about like, okay, this is a good thought. So let's see what you think, Djon. Okay.
Let's do it.
So Missy and Elizabeth decide that they are going to add to the narrative that they are uncomfortable with Dan. They don't really believe that. At least Elizabeth doesn't super like feel that way, but she is cautiously deciding that she is going to say that and lie about that in order to get votes on her side. And I think maybe the goal originally was to get votes onto Dan originally. Lyra was trying to survive. She decides that she is going to add to that narrative. I do not think that's crossing the line about her saying she's lying about being uncomfortable. When it does cross the line is when you are saying that you are coming against someone's character and you are causing someone else, like Janet, to feel like she needs to protect you in a sense that is way more than what it would call for. So just to reiterate, Elizabeth saying that she doesn't like, she's uncomfortable with someone, lying about that, sure, that's fine. But it went too far in the fact of saying Dan is, but it went too far when she added to the, like, by getting Janet to come in to like feel like she has to protect. Do you know what I mean?
Sure. I will say that I do think that making a lie about something that is as sensitive of a topic as like unwelcomed touch and things like that, I do have kind of my reservations on that, because like you said, the whole character thing, like I feel like that comes into that. I don't think it's a bad thing to say a lie about something in order to how do I put this? Because you're trying to discredit a player, but not a person.
I would say like if Elizabeth's like, oh yeah, like I totally want to get Dan out. Like, I don't want to work with him.
I don't trust him. Like, trust is different to being made to feel
Mhm.
like he is a predator. You know,
Mhm.
like
Exactly. So like so once again, the line is so shady at this point of
mhm.
like when it's okay to, but you're right. Like it was crossing the line to say, "Oh my gosh, Dan is making me totally uncomfortable," because you're throwing him too far under the bus.
Yeah. And so even so the thing is, do we know that Missy and Elizabeth are aware of how serious of a situation this is for some of the other contestants? Because that
Right,
is
they
worth
aren't.
noting.
Yes.
That's the thing. Had they have known, do you think that they would have used this as much as they have been using this as a strategy?
I bet you right now on this side of the show, they are really getting a lesson right now and learning a lot.
Because here's my thing. We have had this season where the men, a majority of our life lessons are being come from the way that men are treating women and perceiving women. And there's been a lot of lessons for the men in this game. For us to see women almost capitalizing on that, like that sounds like a really bold, big statement to make because
Hmm.
it can be um, very, a very delicate line. But I don't approve in somebody else being discredited and being made to learn a lesson, and then you trying to gain something from that. You know,
I
it was just kind
know.
of like I did use the term like the boy who cried wolf. It's like don't make these false claims and then expect people to believe you or listen to you later, which is the problem that this is the whole problem. The
Hmm.
problem is these people are kind of like making it less of a thing so that when it becomes a thing, it's not treated seriously. So when these girls are like, we're going to use this to kind of just like get people to kind of like side with us and all that kind of stuff, I say it's no. I'm for me, it's a no
Hmm.
move because
And
yeah, it's
I
so
will
yeah.
jump in right here to just be honest with everyone that like while I was watching the episode, I just saw myself in Elizabeth. I could totally see myself playing like Elizabeth played by just being like, uh-huh, okay, and just like, and I just like saw myself doing what Elizabeth did. So it's just like, man, I just learned a lot from that. And just like, I feel like I would play exactly how she was playing, and that
And
just sucks.
and and it well no, I completely hear where you're
Because it's
coming
like
from
a
because
self-preservation. It's just like you see her playing the game, trying to save herself, protect herself, and do whatever to keep this game going, and unaware that this crossed a line.
and this is that haze that I was referring to, where you're in the
Mhm.
game and everything around you is very hazy. Like you
Mhm.
almost like my idea with that is a lot of the times when you see the players with these big eyes, it's because they're trying to see through this haze and they can't. Because Elizabeth always has these big eyes. She's having these confessionals. She's talking about these things of like, I'm gonna do what it takes. I'm gonna lie. I'm gonna chill. Cheat. I put those words
Or
together.
chill.
But I'm gonna chill. But it was one of those things that it's like, oh, we have to remember that outside of these 39 days, people have to go back to their families. I have to go back to my family. You know, it's one thing to be called a certain type of person. It's another thing to be calling somebody a certain type of person. And then there's another thing to be calling someone a type of person when you don't even believe that in order to benefit yourself,
Whew.
you
Survivor.
know? So there are definitely multiple layers to this episode. There is definitely multiple things, but so we've had the opening, we've had the merge, we've had the conversation. Lauren pulls Missy aside and says, "You're the vote." Kelly's trying to lull you into this false sense of security. Missy then goes, "I don't trust Kelly." Then we see the immunity challenge. So we come to the immunity challenge. Missy is under the impression, given the advice from Lauren, you need to win immunity. So Missy's
Mhm.
fighting for this. we get to a final four. We've got Missy, Elizabeth, Aaron, and Jamal.
Jamal really shocked me that he was still in it. Like, that was amazing.
Right. Well, obviously he felt in the outs and he felt like he really needed to take care of himself. And that's the case because, you know, the numbers that Tommy and Lauren were running didn't involve Jamal, you know, but then we also saw two really strong physical threats in that of Missy and Elizabeth. Aaron was sticking it out. It's like, oh, these original Lyra members actually are physically stronger, even though they couldn't pull out the challenges as a tribe. So it's a really interesting to kind of take that away because I actually think the Lyra people are physically stronger than the original Vokai.
Well, it all came down to those puzzles, and Dean and Karishma cannot do puzzles.
That's exactly right. So we're kind of finding that flip in the challenge threats of the game. But I think it was the right move. You and I discussed this last episode. Missy's the right move to take out at this point of the game.
I know.
And it's clear that people like Missy and Elizabeth are willing to do whatever it takes to get to this end of this game. And it can be seen as strong gameplay or it can be seen as ugly because it, you know, really affects other people. But it like from a survivor standpoint, like removing, not to ever remove all of the seriousness from this episode, but if you were to remove that context, if you were to be Rob and Sandra in the treehouse at Tribal Council, not having any information on what's going on at camp, when you see a vote to take out Kelly and Rob says that was a smart move, it makes you start to think as an audience, okay, we're invested on a human level, but that gameplay was the right move.
Mm-hmm.
So where do I stand?
So you know, going back to Kelly, like you're saying, it was a smart move to get rid of Kelly. Kelly had two idols in her pocket at that vote out, and did she have any idea votes were coming for her? Because I feel like if you know votes are coming for you, you play the idol. But did she have any idea votes were coming for her? I feel like she was super surprised.
She turned to Lauren while they were going up to vote.
Yeah.
And she said, "Are we good?" And Lauren just nodded and then looked away. For me, that wouldn't have been enough of a trusting moment. I mean, had that been the truth, I'm sure that would have been appreciated from Lauren, but it wasn't the truth. You've got two idols. You might as well play one now. And then.
Oh my gosh, I know. I literally could not believe it. Me and my friend Caitlin were watching at her house and we were pacing around the living room. Like, is this happening? Is she not playing her idol? And we could
I yelled at the screen.
Oh my gosh, we have our James 2.0.
We thought we'd never see it again, and here we are.
Here we are. She found two idols in the span of like 2 days.
Yeah. And then went home. But okay, here's an important takeaway. She left the game, smile on her face, appreciative of how the blind side went. And I think it's important to note her feelings around it. I think she appreciated the game for what it was. I think she's a huge fan. I think if she was asked to play again, that she would. I don't think that she has a stance on how, I mean, I can't speak on behalf of her, but having seen the episode, having seen the producers talk to her, having her say, I think it will be fine because Janet's here. Is that enough of a defense that there's another contestant there that she feels like okay with? Not necessarily, but that's when the meetings happened. That's when they had the individual meetings. That's when he was given the warning. You know, production went beyond her request and took extra measures. But she, from what we saw, felt reassured that it was a game and that she was able to leave the game knowing it was a game and that the real life stuff is real life stuff. And she was seen as a game player and that's why she was voted out of the game. I don't think that her getting voted out of the game was because of her claims. I don't think it was anything to do with anything like that. So I don't feel like the vote should ever be received to feel like people were discrediting her and that's why they wanted to get rid of her. It was purely because she was an amazing game player.
Yeah.
And we have talked about this so much in the last couple of episodes. You know that Kelly was like my favorite player coming up to this point.
Oh,
and
she
now
was killing it.
Janet has also been an amazing player for me. And this is where, in my opinion, the ugly episode begins.
Yeah, it was the beginning of this next hour.
Right. But I think it is worth mentioning from the first episode, we have that moment between Jamal and Nora. Jamal being like, I want to take out Dan. Jamal goes to Janet. Janet goes to Elizabeth. We have a very questionable confessional from Elizabeth saying, I know for a fact that Janet is lying to my face. And we as an audience know for a fact
that she's
Janet
not
wasn't lying to her face.
Oh, that was so hard to watch.
So then we can sit there in Elizabeth's shoes and say, these people are amplifying it, not me.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just feeding into it.
Oh, that is something I haven't thought about. I haven't thought about how Elizabeth has this whole perception that this actually isn't a real issue. She thought Janet was lying to her.
Correct. She
thought my gosh.
Janet was the one that was blowing this situation up to reel the girls in to make them feel like it was a bigger issue. Like, at this point, people are only amplifying it because they think somebody else did it before them. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's like, but if we had have mentioned this to Dan, and honestly, I don't think it's not for Kelly to mention because she's already mentioned it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like she's already done this. It's not her responsibility to remind him. It's his responsibility to not do that. But if the other girls are feeling uncomfortable and they're telling him to his face that they're not uncomfortable, there is a line because, like, you shouldn't be made to feel like you have to call people out constantly on their thing. But you can't, you can't paint someone as being disrespectful when you're giving them the idea that they're being respectful.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. I mean, like Kelly told him straight up at the very beginning that she was uncomfortable and, no one else did.
So to remove Kelly's situation from this, like to remove for lack of a better term, the real situation that was conducted in these episodes versus the relationships with people like Elizabeth, Missy, Lauren, people who have an opinion about the way he's treating them, but don't bring it to his attention, in a way that is like, yeah, maybe you could stop doing that, because they're almost giving him permission when they say, I don't want to say permission, they're giving him the understanding that the touch is welcomed in the form of a back rub, in the form of this, when he, for what we see as an audience, keeps on asking, is this okay? Is this okay? Is this okay? And this is where the line is blurred again, because we've already heard people say you can't bring it up because it's going to cause a thing. And you don't want that in a game. In real life, you can do that because it's conducting yourself in a real life matter. So again, it is that kind of complicated narrative of how do I conduct myself in this situation as a human being versus as a game player? And I think the girls saw that they didn't want to cause a rift, so they kept quiet, but that also amplifies real world situations that are going to cause other things as well. The reality of the situation, if Dan wasn't as touchy-feely, none of this would happen. But they also say that, if Tommy touches them on the shoulder and stuff like that, they don't think anything of it. So I think it is, in the scheme of things, something that has been addressed, somebody who has been addressed, somebody who hasn't necessarily taken the measures that needs to be taken, and then how it is being culminated into this tribal council that we see at this end of the second episode, which was big.
I will say, like, as you were talking, I was thinking about how those big mistakes you see people make on day one of Survivor, when the person is being so bossy about making the tribe camp, and no one is saying anything because they're sitting back and they're thinking, yeah, keep on being bossy, keep on telling people what to do. We're going to vote you out first. Easy first vote. I wonder if that plays into it of like, yeah, keep on making people uncomfortable, Dan. Keep on, not heeding to the warnings because we get to vote you out. Easy vote. You know what I mean? Like maybe Lyra was
Honestly,
thinking this is good for us. Lyra's okay with it. And like I said, they probably fed into it more than was called for in order to like ensure that this would happen. And then it twists around and they get Kelly out.
Yep. And I think that's really what it is. People are 99% gameplay, 1% real world. And unfortunately, Janet decided to go real world, and people gameplayed her.
And we saw, oh my goodness, we saw her go through it. We saw oh my gosh, did you just feel it from Janet? She tried, she did the
desperately.
real world thing. She was trying to protect them. She loved her girls. And we saw her get played. And we saw the aftermath of her getting played.
Mm-hmm.
And we saw leading up to the next vote out, we see Janet find an idol, and I was so ecstatic when she found that idol.
Yeah.
I was like, this is what she wants. Like, if Elizabeth had found an idol, I would have been like, golf clap. Yay, good for you. But when Janet finds the idol, I am like fist pumping, jumping around, so excited. And she said that she's putting one foot after another. She's just going to keep on going and she won't give up.
The reason she found it is because she was still playing. She found herself sleeping away from the camp because she needed to process everything that had gone on the night before. She sees Missy and Aaron walk off with a shovel. And she's like, okay, we're clearly, and she's like, so I followed them. And I was like, well,
I love it.
Done.
I love it.
Done. And she lost them, and in the process ended up finding her an idol.
So here's my question. When's the last time that we've seen the older lady archetype find an idol?
Sandra.
In Heroes versus Villains, which she might have still been in her late 30s, or was she in her 40s by Heroes versus Villains?
I mean, it was 10 years ago.
Yeah. So yeah, maybe like 40. So like she might have been 40 or
I'd say late 30s.
So like still like not definitely not Janet level.
Yeah. But seriously, it's like we didn't see like Tina Wesson in like Blood versus Water or anything like that. I'm trying to figure out if we've had that older woman. I don't know. I couldn't tell you.
No one is coming to mind. Like I think of Chrissy Hoffbeck, but she had a fake idol that she was carrying around telling people it was an idol. Love Chrissy. So anyways, I was just so happy to see that happen. I loved seeing her choke up. Like it just made it feel like this was her saving grace right now.
Right, because here's the thing, like coming back from a tribal council like that, where you've put your heart and soul into it, and to watch everybody like fist bump and do this kind of stuff. Like even just watching Kelly go to get her torch snuffed, and we have that clip back to Dan going, yeah, you put that torch in the ground.
I hated it.
Right, here's the thing. I watched it a second time and I went, well, wouldn't you say the same thing to somebody who just tried to vote you out?
Yeah, that is true.
Do you know what I mean? Like, context changes everything. But it's like, there is that kind of situation where...
I don't think I would do that, though. I would do it in my head. I definitely would do it in my head. I would not say it out loud.
Right. I mean, yeah.
Okay, so the same morning that we see Janet find her idol, we see Jamal grab a note hanging from a tree. He jumps on
Karishma wanted.
Karishma is, once again, I'm just talking about the character of Karishma, but the character that we've been seeing on Survivor is Karishma the victim. She was like, I saw it and I was going to grab it, but then he did.
That would totally be me. It really
You would be that
would.
way. So
I would be like, so I saw it. I'm the Reem and the Keith of finding that stuff.
I was the one who saw it.
Mm-hmm. But you know what? I was just gonna say I'd probably be like, all right, go for it. I don't want to. I know who's got it. I know who went. I know about it, and I didn't have to experience it firsthand. I just knowledge is power for me.
If you see the note that says "get on the boat," like, of course you're gonna get on the boat. I'm getting on the boat.
Is that what it said? Is that what the writing said on it?
Yeah, it said, I don't exactly remember, but it says, if you want, you can jump on this boat and see what happens.
But is that what it said when it was hanging there? Like,
no,
because there was something that you could read.
Yeah, it said, I can't remember. Oh, it says, you found me, I'm yours. So he opens it. It doesn't mean he has to jump on the boat. He still had the option whether or not to jump on the boat.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
My takeaway was he grabs it, he's going on the boat. Like, he had no choice in going to Island of Idols.
No, I think that he had the choice because they said at the Island of Idols, when Sandra says, read it loud and read it proud, his lesson was, if it seems too good to be true, it probably is. So.
See, my whole thing was, I thought the lesson was, you see a note hanging, you don't grab it, which is why I was like, well, that's stupid, because if you see a note, Survivor, you're going to grab it.
You're going to grab it. No, I think he had the option of of going or not. But it was so worth it for me because you guys know I love Jamal. I'm Jamal proud, Jamal strong. And his reaction to Sandra and Rob is what I've been waiting for this whole season. No one has lived up to my need for the reaction except Jamal.
Nora didn't live up to your reaction?
Oh dear. Okay. So Jamal says, what have you guys been doing? Have you guys been here for years? And he was freaking out. He hugs Sandra and says, the queen stays queen. Oh, Jamal, you are everything. Thank you, Jamal, for everything.
I will say I have a very bipolar feeling towards Jamal. I love him one episode. I hate him the next episode. Yeah. Love him, hate him, love him. And I will say that this episode was a love for Jamal.
Yes. We end on a high note.
Well, I mean, yeah, exactly. Ending the experience of loving Jamal.
As a tear rolls down my face as I think about the vote out. Okay, but Djon, I wanted to ask you, what do you think about this, in my opinion, ridiculous sabotage advantage where he has a piece of paper and he can do whatever he wants? The sacred pencil of Survivor. What are your thoughts?
Well, let me just, when you talked about him and the single tear and being upset, it just dawned on me that he was the only person who's gone to Island of Idols and got voted out in the same episode.
Well, Vince did as well.
In the same episode?
Yeah, didn't he? Or it was the following episode. I think it was
right. I thought it was the next episode. But this was him having the chance to possibly save himself, but not really having the chance to save himself. In my opinion, now it's getting silly because But what happened was Rob did make me feel good about myself when he said that there's this whole idea about temptations. And I was like, haha, my weird mentality of trying to explain why last week, there wasn't this reward for denying the thing. It's like that whole thing. He said you shouldn't need all of these things to win this game. You should have it. Which I'm pretty sure I actually said. But it was like, and then hearing it from somebody else, I was like, well, that's shit. It was like, okay.
What would you do with that piece of paper? Fresh from the group chat, Evan said he would burn it. Just burn it. What would you do, Djon?
That's very, very interesting. I think it was terrible. You're given a pen and you're expected to write something on a piece of paper and have people to believe it. No, it's just not going to work. There's no way.
There's no way. I think the legacy advantage is somewhat of a good idea. Just saying I had to make my own legacy advantage. Sure, but the follow through sucked. It was awful.
Don't get people on the beach, tell them you won something, and then you're going to give this thing to Dean in front of everyone. Like, I thought it was just poorly constructed. When he was saying it and they questioned him, so they're like, oh, so you saw something and you had to write it down? I was like, oh, well, that's like, all right, you had 3 options. It can be this one, it can be this one, or it can be this one. You write down which one you want it to be. Like, that's a better idea than it just being, oh, you have to write down the one thing that every episode in the past, we've just handed it to you. Like, why do you have to write it down this time? Like, that doesn't
You know
make
what?
sense.
Still a better follow through than Nora, though.
Oh, I mean, was it? I would beg to differ.
Oh no, nothing will top how awful Nora's was.
Well, that's how terrible I thought this was. But I
Oh.
honestly looked at it and I went, there is no way this can work. Like, Nora's thing had the potential of working. This had no footing. So whether it was better or worse than Nora's attempt, there was not going to be an outcome where they believed it.
Yeah.
You could kind of maybe draw a map and you can say, I had to follow this track back. I didn't know where I was. And I tried to like do this thing. So I get to give this to somebody. So next time they go to the island, they can follow this track and blah, blah, blah. Like, do you know what I mean? And
That's a really cool idea. I like that. Like a map. Like he has to draw a map and he pretends like that's all he got. And
yeah. He's like, I was on the Island of Idols. I was shown where there's going to be an immunity idol next time. I had to like draw a map for how to get back from that location so that the next person who goes to Island of Idols has the chance to start at the point that I ended, go into the forest, whatever, find an like. It's not actually going to happen, but it means that he builds a bond with somebody who's like, I got this. This can benefit you.
I really, really like that. That is so much better than Jamal could have done. It did.
Sure. I mean, I definitely just like made that up on the spot, but part of me is like, I love making things up on the spot because that's usually when my best ideas. Because
I need to see you play Survivor, Dion. That's what I need to do. I need you on my TV screen.
I need to see me play Survivor.
Okay, let's jump to the immunity challenge where it is hanging over water. When I saw this, I was like, the Kim Spradlin challenge, because I remember Kim Spradlin winning this, and she is a boss, and this is like one of those pretty fun endurance challenges, especially when we see Lauren freaking out 2 seconds into it.
She had no chance. That shocked me. I was kind of like, girl.
Oh, I know. Get it together. It's like that scene from The Office. The Survivor episode where they're doing challenges on the beach.
Voldemort.
And Kelly is blindfolded, and Kelly says, I feel like there's a rock in front of me. And they're like, no, there's not. She goes, I feel like there's a rock in front of me. And she gives up because she thinks there's a rock in front of her. I might have that quote wrong, but that's like Lauren freaking out. Like she was like, it's rolling. I can feel it rolling. And it's like,
and then there's Jamal being like, nope, that's your arms going numb.
Calm down. Yeah. And then also, I just really wanted to like note the Pirates of the Caribbean music that was going through this challenge. If you guys want to go back and listen, it just feels like I'm watching Pirates of the Caribbean, and I loved every second of it.
So funny. So what we saw in this challenge was not only do they play for immunity, like there's 2 immunities. There's one for the man and one for the woman who lasts the longest in this challenge. Which is interesting. We haven't seen that in a few seasons, to my understanding. And I think it's worth noting that last episode, while I think about this reference of not seeing it in a few seasons, we did say that we haven't seen a jury of 14 people, like starting at 14 people in a long time. Last season, we did see a jury made up of every single
Edge of Extinction.
Except for 2 people. So we should probably note that we dropped the ball on that one.
We dropped the buff on that one.
Yes, we did. We dropped the buff. Just to put it out there, this whole episode was my drop your buff moment.
That was literally my thought too.
Yeah, I was like, I can't pick one moment from this. Like, it's the whole episode. And the impact it's had on the real world. I will say that.
I've just been in a perpetual state of drop your buff for the past 24 hours.
I just look at it on the floor. It's just on the floor.
Literally. Okay,
Yeah.
so that was pretty cool seeing a man and a woman win. We had Missy win the girl one and
Yeah.
Aaron win the boy one again.
It's
Great
worth
job,
mentioning.
Aaron, just painting that target on yourself.
Right. And it's also worth mentioning that these were 3 of the 4 people that were at the end of the first immunity challenge we saw. We saw
Oh.
Elizabeth last longer than Missy in the first immunity challenge. And in this challenge, we saw Missy last longer than Elizabeth. So I don't think we can really say that one is stronger than the other. They're both extremely strong. They're possibly the 2 strongest people in the game. Obviously, Aaron is winning, individual immunity after individual immunity. But does he have the social game that these girls have?
Does he?
And exactly. So I would argue that these 2 girls are possibly 2 of the strongest people in this whole game, and something needs to be done about that.
I think something will get done probably eventually, and my girl Lauren will just snake her way through. Okay, Dion, we have been talking for probably like an hour and a half now. I cannot believe it. All we have left to talk about is the last tribal. I do want to give it enough time to like talk about the tribal, but we do,
Right.
Survivor is amazing, but we do have to go on with our lives eventually.
Right. I mean, eventually.
Yeah.
I feel like at this point, Survivor is my life to some level.
I mean, it's been
I
my
just
life for
talk
like the
about
past
it.
24 hours. I've just been talking and thinking about it nonstop. So
You and me both. And I just got to Australia and I've just been talking about Survivor the whole time. But I will say that this tribal council kind of brings everything from the first 2 episodes to
in
the
the
forefront.
first 2 hours, yeah, like all the pieces come together for this final tribal council. I mean, I think the major people we should probably talk about this final tribal. I mean, this final tribal about this tribal council is
Yes.
Janet,
Mm-hmm.
Jamal,
Mm-hmm.
Aaron,
Mm-hmm.
Dan, and Jeffrey Probst.
Jeffrey Probst, absolutely. I agree. We come into it with Janet definitely feeling on the outs. Having this whole takeaway that she tried to do something good with, what information she had to be this mother figure to protect.
And
she
says it was totally my mistake. She says she got played, and she says she's like choking up, right? At this point, she might be choking up, and she's saying sorry for perpetuating.
And I also think it's worth mentioning that the second tribal council, every single person sitting next to Dan claims that they have no problem with Dan.
Really? I didn't even notice that.
Not in the tribal council itself.
Oh, okay.
But they're all talking about in confessionals, I'm fine with Dan, but so-and-so thinks. The other person, I'm fine with Dan, but so-and-so thinks. So it really is this toxicity around this, rumor mill, if you will, because Janet, who was the person that was willing to make a move on behalf of other people, doesn't even have a problem with Dan.
I know. Yeah. And in this episode, so we have a big discussion about all these things and about what happened and how people are feeling. And Jeffrey Probst kind of gives like a whole recap of the discussion. Like in the midst of tribal, Jeff gives a summary. And my friend Barrett says this tribal in this episode needed a Jeff recap.
Yeah.
And then we see Dan upset that this is not getting let go. And Jeff snaps back at him and says, I'm not going to let this go. Like, Jeff is allowed to harp on to something as long as he wants. Dan, you could be annoyed.
But not only that, he held his hand to his chest, looked Dan dead in the eyes and said, I will never let this go.
Ooh.
It was so pointed and poignant that it was like, you need to understand the weight of this. We know that Jeff has been in some very serious tribal councils with real world ramifications.
Yes, he has.
This is not Jeff's first rodeo.
Yes, it is not.
He understands not only the reputation that the show has, which I'm sure a lot of audience members thinks is his priority, but he has to also understand that every single person sitting in this room needs to understand what they're going home to, what the real world is going to see. You know, he's done this for years. He understands what's going to go back. It's harder to see it from an audience's perspective and then go and do it and then come back and go, oh, I'm going to get messages from people that have no idea who I am and have no understanding of my life. You know, you hear about it all the time from contestants from like Drag Race, which is a show about, you know, men competing in a drag competition, and people reach out to them with things like death threats. And it's like, what? It's like, you want to go out there and show who you are, your creativity and all that kind of stuff. These people aren't even voting each other out.
So are you saying that Jeff was really harping on this because Jeff knows what they're going back to and Jeff wants this to be handled? Is that what you're saying?
I think that Jeff and production understand that they have a responsibility to the people that they cast. And whether people think that that was handled as well as it could have been, that's everybody's own opinion. My whole thing is that production can't side with one contestant. They have a responsibility to all 13 people that were sitting at that tribal council, the 2 people sitting in the jury, the people that have already left the game. They have to protect everybody in question, which means they need to air it out in a public, open platform. You know, it's all well and good to have a meeting with your contestants, but this is the opportunity where people get to have their say. It's a tribal council. The whole phrase is to have a council where everybody gets to weigh in. That's the premise of what a tribal council is.
Yeah. So like thinking of like, you know, what's going down and protecting people and all that you're saying, I believe that Jamal had a beautiful response to someone's not so beautiful response.
It's definitely worth noting what that not beautiful response was.
Do you want to share what you recall of what Aaron said that was not the best?
It wasn't the best, absolutely. I do believe that Aaron, in an attempt to support the women that Janet was referring to in the form of, I'm assuming, Missy, Elizabeth, and even Lauren, because she does include Lauren in that grouping of girls, of saying that these are the girls that came to me, expressed how uncomfortable they were.
Really don't even remember. This was hour 2 of the, you know, I didn't watch it again. I literally do not even remember who she was talking about.
Right. Well, even when Janet sits down with Dan the first time after tribal council, she brings up those 3 women and says they came to me crying and, you know, completely this and that way.
So Aaron is trying to like defend
these girls
and defend himself, and he says like,
in the attempt of supporting them, he said if this was actually going on, not verbatim, he said in a degree, if this was actually going on, I would have heard about it, Tommy would have heard about it. And to the audience, that comes across as, well, the people who would have needed to know would have known in the form of the larger, stronger male figures in this camp.
And Jamal comes with a beautiful response in his beautiful voice. And he said something along the lines of like, we have a responsibility to hear women, believe women when they're ready to tell the story. And he's saying like, this is exactly what we're seeing in the real world right now.
Yes.
And I just feel like Jamal has brought so much good content to Survivor and to the world, and he is doing great things.
What I appreciate even more about Jamal's approach is we've seen a good and a bad edit of Jamal. But Jamal is not oblivious to his edit in the show. He's not oblivious to the fact that he can be perceived wrong. You saw him say to Jack with Kelly making the fire, did I do something wrong? You see him admit fault. So hearing it from him, it's kind of humbling because you can see that he's talking from experience. You know, he's not blatantly calling people out. He's almost a voice of reason in the form of, no, man, no, that's not how this works.
Yeah.
You know, there are so many people. And we had the conversation earlier in this season of Aaron and Missy feeling like they got along because they were both African Americans. Jamal is sitting there as well as an African American man. So as one African American man to another African American man, like there are other connotations behind this as well, because he's already expressed how he can be piled into a grouping. So I feel like he felt the need to kind of say something in that moment to say, no, we don't all agree with what Aaron's saying right now.
Yeah.
And I think Aaron needs to understand that what he's saying right now is flawed, because Aaron, on the other side of it, isn't being provided with the information that those girls have been provided with, that Janet's been provided with, that has been going through the rumor mill. And it kind of came across so arrogant in the understanding that he would know of something serious going on, because that's
I
just
know.
his chick.
Yeah. And so, like, before we came on and recorded, both Djon and I watched a video that Aaron put on Instagram, a 3-minute long video apologizing, and it was really good to see. He just apologized for what he said, and he starts crying in the video, talking about how he felt and what happened and everything.
Right.
So that
I
was
think
really
it's
good to see.
Yeah, I think it's worth noting that it came across as a sincere apology. He didn't. He expressed that if people don't accept his apology, that's okay, because everybody's entitled to their opinion, which I think is a very important thing to mention. I feel like some people, especially on social media, will put out an apology expecting people to just accept it and move on.
Yeah.
And he didn't do that. You know, he's not going to sit there and say, well, I apologize on Instagram. What more do you want?
Exactly.
You know? And I think that some other people do have that approach. But he obviously has seen what we've seen now. People will speak out of context. People will speak without having enough information about certain situations.
Exactly.
He felt the need to protect people he was close to. Unfortunately, it was not in the best light. You know, we've also seen a mixed edit of Aaron, you know, talking about his son and what's important to him and how he comes across as a certain person, but he has to do what he needs to do. And I feel like in this moment, he was feeling like he was coming to the defense of some kind of people. And unfortunately, we see that those people aren't necessarily being portrayed quite highly in this episode. So he does look like he's come to the defense of the wrong people. And even then, some people will say the opposite. He is come to the defense of the right people, but going about it the wrong way. But
yeah,
you know,
so once again, like the Aaron we see on TV is not the Aaron in real life, and homie was trying.
I think it's,
you know,
I think it's worth noting that the people that we see on TV, none of them are the person we see in real life.
Exactly.
You know.
But Janet is probably every ounce of amazingness in real life that she is on TV. I just left this episode like Janet, like I'm totally cool with her playing her idol on herself. I think that was the move to do. Yeah, only two votes
that's
came
what Kelly should have done.
Yeah, that's what Kelly. Like, if you have any inkling, she knew she was on the hot seat. I'm so glad she played it for herself. I do not gripe for anything that it was played incorrectly. Right. I am so proud of Janet, and like looking ahead, I really hope that she can find a footing and that she can make her way through this game.
All right, so people who are in good spots, people who somewhere in the middle, people who are in trouble.
Oh gosh, I literally haven't even thought about this because this episode was so crazy.
I will go as far as to say Janet's in trouble.
I know. I hope she can find her footing. 2 people are going home next week, and in our scenes
going home next week.
In our scenes from next week, we get a glimpse of Tommy and Missy are going for each other. So I think
is what should have happened.
That's the move. Those are the two power players.
I'm going to put it out there. I would actually love to see Tommy and Lauren go home. I'm sorry.
No.
I have completely flipped my opinion of the two of them because they're not, for me, they're playing a middle ground game that I just, it doesn't seem it doesn't seem Survivor-y to me.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like it seems like it's.
And in my point of view, I view it as like super Survivor-y. That's like a new word we came
Super
up with.
Survivor-y.
Survivor-y. Like they're playing all the angles, and I think that they're definitely painting the target on themselves way too much. Like we saw Tommy this episode
Right.
do a bunch of like Lauren and I want this, and it's like I do agree with you. It's going to come to a head. Who is getting out first, Tommy or Lauren?
Tommy or Lauren?
Which one? Who are they going to vote out first
Tommy.
out of the two? Yeah. I think
Absolutely.
You're right. I think that they would take out Tommy first.
Yeah, because Missy thinks that she can work with Lauren, but can Missy work with Lauren if Tommy's out of the game?
That's what she wants to happen.
Right, but is Lauren going to let that happen?
Oh, my girl Lauren, she can do whatever she wants. She's got this.
Oh
Lauren till the end.
Honestly, I have such a better vibe from the jury than the people remaining in the game right now.
I know.
Like for me, honestly, the people that I would like to see at the end, Dean, Karishma, Nora, and Janet. Those are the only people I care to see at the end of this game.
Did you just say Karishma and Nora?
Yep, that's how much I dislike everybody else in this game.
Oh, they've got a lot of work to do to get back in our good graces, don't they?
I mean, it's important. It's important.
It is. This is going to be so fascinating going forward.
Yes.
This episode almost broke me, but Here we are. We're going to keep this podcast going. We're going to keep having fun talking about Survivor.
Mm-hmm. I can't wait to see Kelly and Jamal's Ponderosa experience. I think that's going to be really important. And
I can't wait to see Kelly tell Jamal that she went home with 2 idols in her pocket. It's gonna be awful.
Oh, but let's just keep in mind that the 3 people in the jury have all had a very good takeaway from being voted to Ponderosa.
They're all
I think
wonderful
it's
people.
Be a good experience. Right. And I think we should feel comforted in knowing that those 3 people feel the way they feel after seeing how the season is transpiring. You know, the people who are taking away the experience from the game are a reflection of how the situation actually took place. They experienced it firsthand. They were there. Do you know what I mean? So we can have an opinion. We can sit there and kind of go, the real world ramifications, the real world this, that, blah, blah, blah. Those are the people that experienced it firsthand. They'll have the opinion. They're the ones that I'm listening to. And I want to see how the people getting voted out in the future episodes, how they have their say and who they vote for to win the thing.
Oh my God. The thing. The title. The money.
The $1 million.
Okay. Wow. So I hope that we got our thoughts out there for this podcast. I don't feel like I, have a ton of clarity leaving this, but I'm looking forward to finally diving into what other people have said, what different exit interviews. I'm looking forward to this discussion continuing, and honestly, just talking about the game and what we just talked about this whole episode is where the line is and when you cross the line. Thank you, everybody who has made it this far in the podcast. I know that this has been a very long one. I hope that you enjoyed it.
Thank you for listening to our perspective. That's really important to us.
And thank you for
we're just 2 people.
Good messages and not being mad at us.
Yeah.
And any feedback is appreciated. You
Absolutely.
Give us that feedback
Humble
on Twitter.
Us.
On Twitter is Drop Your Buff Pod. Drop Your Buff Pod is our handle. We also, did you know, Djon, that we had an email address?
What?
We have a Gmail.
This is news to me. Please share it with our audience members.
It is dropyourbuffspodcast@gmail.com. So if you would like to send us an email, you just go for it.
Just to clarify, is that Drop Your Buffs with an S at the end? Because I know our Twitter or one of our accounts does not have an S at the end of buff.
Yeah, Twitter's Drop Your Buff Pod, and Gmail's dropyourbuffspodcast@gmail.com. So,
Perfect.
And then Djon is Djon Alexander. Hannah is Hannah Julia. And thank you for chiming in.
You're all wonderful.
Djon, you're wonderful.
You're wonderful.
I am wonderfully going to go eat dinner.
Yes. Hannah, I have something for you.
What
It
is
is
it?
dinner.
Oh, yay. Well, Djon, I've got nothing for you. So
No.
I hope you have a good rest of your morning in Australia.
Yes, it is. What time is it? It's midday. We've
It
been
is
recording for a long time.
midday in Australia. Yes, we have. Okay, well, have a great rest of your day. Bye,
Thanks.
everyone.
Bye.
Everybody, drop your buffs.
Drop your buffs.
Everybody, drop your buffs.
Drop your buffs.
Everybody, drop your buffs.